I would like to start the event with the recitation of the Holy Quran. I request our colleague Shujat Ali that please start the.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful.
الحمد لله رب العالمين.
All praise is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds.
الرحمن الرحيم.
The entirely merciful, the especially merciful.
مالك يوم الدين.
Sovereign of the day of recompense.
إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين.
It is you we worship and you we ask for help.
اهدنا الصراط المستقيم.
Guide us to the straight path.
صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
The path of those upon whom you have bestowed favor, not of those who have evoked your anger or of those who are astray.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله.
You're muted, Mrs. Malik. Ms. Malik, you're still muted.
प्लीज अनम्यूट कर लीजिए.
Can you hear me?
जी अब ठीक है.
Good evening, friends. And I request the other speakers that if you mute your speakers. Good evening, friends, and my worthy panelists. Assalamu alaikum, and all the attendees who are attending this event. This event is live on Facebook. Or if you want to watch it, it's on Center of Pakistan and International Relations, and you can. I request Shujat to share the link so that our other friends and participants who are in the process of entering into the Zoom meeting and also who would like to see online, they can see through Facebook. Center of Pakistan and International Relations with the collaboration of STG Academy is doing series of activities related to Silk Road SDG Global Impact Playground 48. And today, this webinar topic is Pakistan's geoeconomic importance among Belt and Road countries. As we all know that Pakistan is having a very important strategic location and which can give it an added advantage among Belt and Road countries to facilitate sea and land route. CPEC is one of the most successful projects of BRI, and it is considered, and I believe that BRI is an ideal platform to tackle emerging international regional challenges. CPEC bringing economic prosperity and making people an important regional power. Now I would like to request Ms. Iram to give her introduction, and then I move to my speakers. So I request my co-host, Ms. Iram, that she give her introduction. Please, Iram.
Yes. Before introducing myself, Amna, I just request you to invite Dr. Bashir and Urud. I think they are in the attendees list, so they can be
Dr.
included.
Bashir?
Yeah. Dr. Bashir and
Yes.
Uruj.
Acha,
Yeah.
Aruj and Dr.
From
Bashir, we are having our IT team. Mr. Shujat is handling it. So you
okay.
just text in a chat that which person needs to be added. So they will immediately add them. Or the speaker can himself can also tell. So Shujat, I request Mr. Aruj and the other person, Mr. Bashir, should be added. Ji Ram.
Thank you.
जी अरुज
Okay.
किस नाम से हैं? यहाँ पे सर्च में नहीं आ रही हैं एटेंडेंस में.
I think.
Good evening, I'm Dr. Bashir. I have joined. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks. Uruj, आप message कर दें तो just message here so we can include you also. Thanks. Ji, thanks Amna for inviting me in this important session on BRI. I'm Iram Khan. Welcome to this talk show on Pakistan geoeconomic importance among Belt and Road initiatives. I am representing SDG Academy Pakistan, which has initiated a 48-hour-long webathon to focus on the journey of ancient Silk Road to the Belt and Road Initiative by China. As a coordinator, SDG Academy Sindh, we are initiating lots of things related to sustainable development goals under UN Agenda 2030. Since we are coordinating with Amna Malik for all this session in Webathon. We are expecting and we are hoping that with these sessions, we will be basically creating a beautiful, you can say, a dialogue session, a place where we all can share our views, and that can become a kind of gateway to more serious talks and more serious projects later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Iram. Before moving to our honorable speaker, I just want to highlight the story of Center of Pakistan and International Relation and its link with Belt and Road Initiative. Belt and Road Initiative, which is formally called One Belt, One Road Initiative. We have been working with the Chinese government and Pakistan government for a very long period of time, and we published number of reports. And the first panelist I'm going to invite, we closely work together, and we have been honored that our think tank delegation is invited by the Chinese government many times, and we had an experience of interacting with their various chamber of commerce and industry, their Ministry of Commerce and Trade, and also with the organizations which are linked with the think tanks working among the Belt and Road countries. We also work with different women associations as well. So we closely see the development, and I must say I'm really impressed with the leadership of the Chinese government, that they created a new concept of sustainability, inclusivity, and everything. So, you know, this is something which is connecting the world, and connecting economically is something which can also change the political dynamics. And that's why we thought that this is the time to have another webinar and discussion and an event on Belt and Road, keeping in mind the specific importance of geoeconomic importance of Pakistan in this regard. After this event, we are also, as usual, we always publish certain reports and our recommendations. Today, we are having our worthy speakers who are also giving their own research paper and work in this field. So we are thankful to all of them. Now, I would like to invite Janab Hassan Daud Bhatt Saab, who is our very close friend. He's a friend of China, and he is the man behind, I can say, he's one of the main person who played a very important role, especially in developing CPAC project. He was at that time the member planning, and he did a marvelous job to develop bilateral relations between the two countries. His experience helped the two countries to strengthen further ties. And now, Alhamdulillah, he is the CEO of KP-BOIT, and I believe that a lot of investment is coming in his project, and most of the investors, the foreign investors and the local investors are, you know, having a lot of hopes in his project. So I request Hassan Daud Saab, please kindly highlight overall the Belt and Road Initiative and how it is important for Pakistan, how it can change the economic dynamics of Pakistan. And do you think Pakistan is going to be one of the important regional powers? So over to Hassan Daud Saab.
Hello, Amna. I want to say something. Your voice is missing sometime. Is there any technical fault?
No, actually, sometimes Zoom, if you are having some Wi-Fi issues, so sometimes there is some signal issue, because from our end, there is no issue from the internet side.
Okay, thank you.
So maybe you can you can check your own Wi-Fi device or mobile device, maybe.
Okay.
Okay, shall I start? Yeah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are, based on the time you have, local time. First of all, let me congratulate the SDG Institute and Amna's Institute for getting us all together to speak on Belt and Road Initiative, and also speak about the relevance and importance of Pakistan in this larger context of Belt and Road. But you know, since this marathon is about SDG, I mean, it's so pleasing to see that you, in terms of women empowerment, you have 2 women hosts and 2 women speakers. So this largely speaks on the about the global strength that the world is gathering in terms of this. But with this short preliminary remarks, I would just like to quote Charles Dickens here, you know, in terms of his tales of 2 cities, where we live in best of times and we live in worst of time. We live in times of darkness, we live in times of light, and so on. This, perhaps, ladies and gentlemen, for Asia's unprecedented times. Despite so much being spoken about globalization and you know, in terms of pandemic, I am a proponent of globalization, and I think this global phenomena, has taken more people out of poverty than any other initiative taken by human mankind.
Hassan Saab, can you speak little bit louder? We can't hear. Sometimes we hear clearly, sometimes we don't hear clearly.
Okay, I'll get the computer closer to me. So now,
yeah, now we can hear.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
So, as I said, in terms of Charles Dickens, I said this is the best of time and the worst of time, and I believe that for Asia, this is the best of time, despite the fact that globalization and this is a tremendous challenge. We're talking about pandemic and how is it affecting the global economy. But I think in terms of regional integration, in terms of taking people more people out of poverty, talking about healthcare system and socio-economic development, I think at large, Asia is benefiting more, and despite the fact that the global economy is slowing down, and we hear depressing things, but by and large, Asia has done well. Asia did well in 2010 also, and is doing well during the pandemic. I know some of you might argue that our growth is 2.1%, but largely this is going to get better, and when things settle, I think the concept of regional integration and globalization would again re-emerge as the champion of the overall socio-economic development of mankind. With this proviso, I would also like to state that I was lucky enough to attend the 2 Belt and Road forums held in 2017 and also in 2019, and I was able to speak a bit about how Pakistan will play its role in terms of regional integration, and also along with my minister planning, that is, you know, in terms of regional integration and how pivotal it is for Pakistan to play that role. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure our worthy speaker that would follow me would speak about how things should be and how things are, but I would speak about about how they were actually placed in terms of planning and in terms of its initial implementation till the early harvest project, and later how would it go till 2030. And I would also speak why we speak about 2030. And I was speaking in a seminar earlier also, and I will, even at the cost of repetition, would say it here again, that in less than 30 years, Pakistan is going to be 100 years old, and our population would double. And this is a great challenge for any planner. This is a great challenge for any government. And for us, we need instruments which can provide the kind of integration with regional trade ecosystem and connecting us to the global supply chain, starting with perhaps China and then getting to all the way. So in that respect, I think Belt and Road Initiative is one of the biggest initiative connecting Asia with Europe and all that comes in between. For Pakistan, from starting from our Sust port at Kashgar all the way to Gwadar, it is not just providing our regional connectivity with China, but internally also it is providing connectivity with less developed regions of Pakistan. Now you see Balochistan being connected to Sindh through Pusdar Basima Road. You see Balochistan going all the way up through started from Gwadar and connecting to the Chinese border at Gilgit-Baltistan. We also see less developed areas being connected and creating the rural-urban synergy, which is extremely required. And this also brings me to the point, perhaps on Chinese philosophy of, in order to become rich, you must build roads and infrastructure, that is. And in that respect, in 2013, when we were working with Chinese experts, we realized that our scarcity of energy and poor infrastructure were key bottlenecks towards our economic growth. And then again, if you look at the development that has happened within BRI thus far, you would see that both China-Pakistan Economic Corridor and Belt and Road Initiative have similar ages. In 2013, during his visit to Azerbaijan and Indonesia, President Xi Jinping spoke about his vision about the Belt and Road Initiative. And similar times, we were engaging with Premier Li Keqiang in terms of having CPEC, and he was speaking about the community of shared glory, perhaps. And in that respect, we understood that we need to work on development of Pakistan, both incrementally, and what more would we want than connecting ourselves to the second largest economy of the world and connecting to its supply chain. And then in 2015, when President Xi Jinping spoke about his vision and details of that vision about BRI, in 2015, we were able to work on our monographic study in terms of the volume of traffic that would shape up by 2030 and how CPEC largely would connect with Belt and Road Initiative. Actually, we had Afghanistan and then Central Asian Republics in our mind in terms of regional connectivity. But we clearly understood that Pakistan lies at the center of three engines of growth. We have China on our east, we have Central oil-rich or energy-rich Central Asian Republics on our west, and then we have India and smaller nations, in terms of economy, I must say. Like Sri Lanka and others, and connecting themselves to the Belt and Road Initiative. So the debate during the first forum was largely about One Belt, One Road, which lately translated into Belt and Road Initiative for obvious reasons. But it was more about connectivity and infrastructure, because discussion there was about dearth of infrastructure largely, and Pakistan in terms of per capita per capita development cost is far behind in terms of government spending on infrastructure, vis-a-vis perhaps China and some of the other developing countries in the region. And also in the second Belt and Road Forum, the discussion was largely about benefiting and leveraging each other's benefits and endowments in terms of connectivity. And then you saw Italy coming in, and a lot of media attention was given to that forum. But I remember President Xi's statement in that day was about good weather and how would that connect us in terms of Belt and Road Initiative. But coming back to my last two discussion point is that for Pakistan, it gives us tremendous opportunity to develop our agriculture, develop our trade and business practices. It also gives us a lot of support, and which China has demonstrated in terms of addressing the locust problem just lately, and also to address initially in March or post 23rd of March, in order to address pandemic issues, and Chinese support flew in from Beijing and rest of China, Nanjing also. And that is what actually the spirit of Belt and Road Initiative is about: connecting ourselves, humanity getting closer. You see, this is not just about economy and trade; it is also about culture. It is also about people-to-people interaction. And when this people-to-people interaction will take place across the entire route, you would see diversity. And this is the beauty of Belt and Road Initiative, that it brings out diversity amongst nation and bring that diversity to the advantage of each one of us. And in terms of its technical aspirations and in terms of its implementation, I think speakers later would speak about it. But I think this is based on the fact, and these are certain assumptions I make when I write or speak about Belt and Road Initiative. And I think that China would remain the factory of the world till at least 2050. After that, perhaps I will not be on this planet, so I don't really care. But till 2050, perhaps China would be the factory of the world. And despite the fact that you hear various voices coming out from India and rest of the world in terms of their ability to take over from China as the engine of growth, but this won't happen. Because the gap is large, and in order to bridge that gap, a lot of effort has to be taken in terms of improving that infrastructure, and even in terms of efficiency. I think nations would get closer because of this Belt and Road Initiative. Those countries and nations which are opposing Belt and Road Initiative, when they look, and this is when I talk of regional countries and those countries which are lower as middle and lower income nations, when they see projects like CPEC doing well and bringing socio-economic development and growth in our country, in our respective countries, I think they would be attracted to be part of this. I think from Chinese perspective of Deng Xiaoping of Baoquan Yonghui, which was lying low, become the second largest economy of the world and progressing well to become the first. I think there are a lot of reasons and a lot of points that we can emulate in terms of growing faster, because this is unprecedented. So many people coming out of poverty in so little time is unprecedented. And I think countries like Pakistan can learn, and this is in terms of SDGs also. You know, SDGs, as opposed to the Millennium Development Goals, are doing well only because of China. Only because so many people are out of poverty and so much trade activity is happening because of it. But I think with this, having said what I've said earlier, I think each of us in our respective countries need to also look at our natural endowments and leverage that in best of our national interests. By and large, we are happy to be part of of the Belt and Road Initiative. We will remain engaged with China in terms of building our capacity to do better trade, improve our capacity to run special economic zones, and also industrialize Pakistan. Here in Pakistan, we realize that we cannot become rich only by agriculture alone. We need industrial development, and I think it's important for us to become rich. Besides other aspect of human growth, it's extremely important for us to become rich, and the mean that I see now is, despite our internal development, is regional integration, and the platform that we can use to best of our national interests is Belt and Road Initiative. So with this, I end this. If anyone would have a question later, I would answer.
Thank you very much, Daud Saab. Quite well informative discussion. You highlighted all the important features and initiative. If somebody is interested to ask any question, they can just write it down, and after every 3 panelists, we will give time for question answer session. So now I would like to move to our next speaker, Mr. Michael Willington. Michael, welcome. Mr. Willington, you are welcome. You are an editor of Executive Intelligence Review, an author of Reflection of an American Political Prisoner. Being a writer and a part of Labour Party, Michael has extensively covered the history of Belt and Road Initiative. Here today, he's going to discuss a very important aspect, that how his organization, Executive Intelligence Review, and Schiller Institute in the original formulation of New Silk and Road play their important role. He will also provide his thoughts on the recent agreement reached between China and Middle East countries, Iraq, Lebanon, and Iran, in conjunction with CPAC as a model for success of this approach. So over to Mr. Willington.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you well.
Good. Okay, thank you. I'm very thankful that you invited me to this extremely important conference on the Belt and Road and Pakistan's special role in that, as you said, a model really for the kind of development which is possible virtually any country in the world who takes up this challenge. I think to have any discussion at this moment in history, I think I want to begin by taking note of the fact that we are in one of the most grave existential crises of mankind within our lifetimes, or at least since World War II. And it's important to keep that in mind as we discuss this extremely important Belt and Road project. Not only do we have this horrid pandemic, but this is, we're in the midst of an economic breakdown crisis unprecedented in modern history, and only somewhat sparked by the pandemic. The economic crisis actually was ongoing and was getting worse in the Western nations, not in China and not in Asia so much. And the financial crisis, which is absolutely horrendous. And again, this was ongoing long before the pandemic hit. We're sitting on top of $2 quadrillion in derivative debts. Quadrillion is 1,000 trillion. This is at more than double the derivative bubble in 2008. And this bubble was beginning to collapse beginning last in September. They began a massive bailout. And when the pandemic hit, as you probably know, Europe and the United States, the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, and the Federal Reserve have pumped close to $14 trillion into the system, only a small portion of which is going to the real economy. Most of it is going into bailing out banks who are holding these bad gambling debts. So on top of that, as I'm sure everyone is aware, we are in a period of pre-war crisis. The breakdown of relations between the United States and China is extremely severe and extremely dangerous. It could potentially become a war, and potentially a nuclear war. This is being warned about in China, it's being warned about in Russia, and even in some of the Western nations. Kevin Rudd, the former Prime Minister in Australia, has recently warned that there could be not a Cold War, but a hot war between the US and China between now and the US election in November. We have to keep this in mind and we must act to prevent it. And that's what I want to really address. After the 2008 crisis, Mr. LaRouche at that time said that there was no resolution to the economic crisis in any one country. The only way it could be resolved would be for the leaders of the major powers, the US, Russia, and China, at least those three, as well as other countries willing to participate, must come together and build basically a new Bretton Woods system, which addresses this financial breakdown crisis, but given the circumstances, also addresses the urgent need to end the drive for war, that we must take on emergency health measures for the world as a whole, given the circumstances. I'll just mention that the head of the World Food Program, Mr. Beasley, recently warned that we could have 300,000 deaths per day in Africa as a result of starvation because of the breakdown of the food supply and the locusts, as well as the pandemic. This is the level of urgency for the world's nations to come together, not to be in conflict, but to come together in dealing with these incredible crises. Mr. LaRouche's proposal for a new Bretton Woods also said it must be based on a development process like that which we now know as the Belt and Road, what we called the New Silk Road at the time. And I think it's worth going through the history of this. When the Soviet Union fell in the early 1990s, Mr. and Mrs. LaRouche, Helga Zepp LaRouche, Lyndon LaRouche's wife, immediately said we must end the British division of the world into East versus West. This is the opportunity with the fall of the Soviet Union. To do that, we need to build a new Silk Road. We need to connect Europe and Asia through high-speed rail development corridors, not just to get from one place to another, but to build new cities, to develop the resources in the interior, the Russian Far East, Central Asia, and a southern route down through Southeast Asia into India, Pakistan, and the Middle East. This idea we took around the world. The Russians at the time were in total disarray, with carpetbaggers from the West basically stealing everything they could under Yeltsin's government. They were unable to respond, but the Chinese responded very strongly. They organized with us a conference in 1996 in Beijing with leading speakers from, oh, I see, I can't use share screening. Okay, it doesn't matter.
No, if you, Mr. Billington, if you want to use screen, we can make you the co-host. Then you can use the screen. You want to use the screen? You want to show some presentation?
Actually, don't worry. I have what I was going to show you. This is the report from, I'm not sure if you can read it this way, but this was the report for the 1996 conference in Beijing. It's called the Eurasian Land Bridge, the New Silk Road Locomotive for Worldwide Economic Development. That was an extremely important conference. It set things in motion. As you probably know, there was a financial crisis at the end of the 1990s in Asia. Actually, it was the beginning of a global financial crisis, but it was called the Asian crisis. And it slowed things down somewhat, but nonetheless, the Chinese did begin the Silk Road process. They built a rather primitive rail, but it did go through Central Asia, and you had the beginning of that process. The idea of that conference was peace through development. It's very much like your previous speaker, Mr. Hassan Daud, who I think very correctly said that infrastructure is the key to peace. It's the key to development, and it's the key to peace. And this was the idea that we worked with the Chinese on in that 1996 conference. It would be worth noting that a few years before that 1996 conference, we had the Oslo Accords between the Israelis and the Palestinians, which was a tremendous potential for ending this festering crisis in the Middle East. Mr. LaRouche immediately said, get the tractors rolling. Don't wait around for new political agreements. It's development that comes first, that makes for peace. You don't have peace and then development. You must get the tractors rolling and keep the IMF and the World Bank out of it, because they will prevent the tractors from rolling. Unfortunately, as you know, that did not happen. Nothing really happened. Within a few years, they killed Yitzhak Rabin, the crazies in Israel, who've been pretty much running Israel since. So, but that was the idea. It's the development which is crucial if you're going to resolve the crises left by the remnants of the British Empire, the divide and conquer policies, which of course you're very familiar with there in South Asia as well. Following that, what did we have in the United States? We had 16 years of colonial idiocy under George Bush and Barack Obama. The regime change wars, wars against countries under the guise of a war on terrorism, when in fact we were destroying countries who were the most anti-terror in Iraq and Libya and Syria. The Afghan war had its own characteristics, but as President Trump correctly said, the Iraq war was the greatest mistake in American history, causing millions of deaths and refugees, destruction, driving countries back into the Stone Age, turning them into warring terrorist gangs, basically. And thank God the Russians stepped in the Syria issue, so it hasn't been completely destroyed. But it was these ideas that we have had to fight within the United States. Then finally in 2013, as you've noted, Xi Jinping announced the Belt and Road. In 2014, I had the opportunity to travel to China with Helga Zepp-LaRouche. And the message we took was, don't limit this Belt and Road to Eurasia and the Maritime Silk Road. That was the initial announcement. This must be global. You must take this policy to Africa, to South America, and even to the United States, where the infrastructure is in a state of absolute decay and collapse, which is another thing that President Trump promised to address, but has not been able to do much. So this idea became what we called then the idea that the new Silk Road becomes the world land bridge. The idea being that this in fact had to become a new paradigm for mankind based on the concept of the common interests of mankind, as opposed to geopolitics, which argues that it's a dog-eat-dog, zero-sum game world. This is the core of the British imperial view of the world. And we must replace geopolitics with this idea, what Xi Jinping calls a community with a common future. So these were the ideas that we took. I think as far as China goes, as has already been noted, China had carried out an absolute miracle in the previous 30 to 40 years, lifting 700 or 800 million people out of poverty, turning China's high-speed rail 25,000 kilometers, more than the rest of the world combined, nuclear power development, fusion research, a space program, ports, and so forth. And Xi Jinping's idea was to take this idea that infrastructure is the key for beating poverty. To get out of poverty, you must build the infrastructure which lifts the productive power of your nation as a whole. It lifts the productive power of labor. And it's the idea of being a debt trap, by the way, I should mention, you've heard this, I'm sure, that China's Belt and Road is a debt trap to take countries over. Well, I'll tell you what a debt trap is. You know very well. I think it was $14 billion a year Pakistan pays to import its oil and gas. And the IMF and the Western banks would be glad to finance your purchase of those things, but they wouldn't build any infrastructure. And the result is you get more and more debt without the capacity of productivity, and that is a debt trap. The Chinese approach is to reject debt traps by extending credit, but the credit goes into real productive capacity, starting with infrastructure and moving to industrialization. So this is the key. Now, is it possible? Is this going to work, or are we heading for war? I would argue, and we argue strongly, that the only potential for making this work is an offer that was made by Vladimir Putin to the P5, the permanent 5 members of the Security Council, which includes the US and Russia and China, those crucial three. Plus, in this case, it would be France and England as well. But to bring those leaders together for personal diplomacy to address the pandemic, to address the threat of war, to address the breakdown of the Western financial system. We need this kind of emergency view by the leaders of these nations to come together to override the people like Mike Pompeo and the British MI6 crowd who have orchestrated these wars and orchestrated the anti-Russia, anti-China hysteria. Now, I said I would address the Chinese agreements with Iraq and Iran and Lebanon. I think given the extreme danger in Lebanon, I'm only going to talk about Lebanon for a few minutes. The Chinese did sign an agreement with Iraq last year, a $25 billion oil for infrastructure program, and they're close to concluding a deal with Iran for a 25-year oil for infrastructure program. But the Lebanon situation is a potential spark for global war, and we have to address it. The explosion, this horrendous explosion, which President Aoun has said we do not write off that this was sabotage. It may have been an accident, but they don't write off that it was sabotage. Look at what's happened. Before that explosion, Lebanon was already in a state of chaos. Political chaos, economic disintegration, hyperinflation, and a general breakdown. Last year, Mike Pompeo went to Lebanon and basically told them that they must throw Hezbollah out of their government or pay the consequences. And that, of course, is a call for a civil war. That's all it is. Then, over time, earlier this year, the US imposed something called Caesar sanctions, supposedly on Syria. But actually, and Caesar is a good name because Pompeo and Caesar go together. But these sanctions are actually sanctions on other countries who do trade with Syria. And of course, almost all of Syria's trade goes through Lebanon. So this was a vicious attack on Lebanon. Another State Department official went there and again said these sanctions will be imposed if you don't remove Hezbollah from your government. So last month, or June rather, Mr. Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, went on their national TV. He denounced these Caesar sanctions, but he also said we must break from the IMF, who offer us money to refinance our debt, but refuse to build any infrastructure in our country. And we must join with the Belt and Road. And China has made these offers to build the infrastructure. Then on July 2nd, I believe, yes, July 2nd, the Prime Minister Diab and his cabinet ministers met with the Chinese ambassador and agreed to proceed. 10 major Chinese companies began making deals. And the Chinese said to the Lebanese, we understand you cannot pay your debts right now to the Western banks and to the IMF, but we are going to extend new credits which will build infrastructure and industry and therefore have a basis for being repaid over time. And this is an exact example of what's known as Hamiltonian economics. It's the way Alexander Hamilton got America out from under the British grip after the Revolution. And it's the idea of what was once well known as the American system of economics, which of course we don't know in America anymore, unfortunately. But this was the approach. The idea here was that we would join the Belt and Road very much with Pakistan's development in mind of how this has succeeded in Pakistan. So was the explosion an accident? Was it sabotage? We don't know, but this is the kind of period in which you have to look at these issues with utmost seriousness because of the danger of war, which could spark a global war, a thermonuclear war, virtually overnight if we don't deal with this at the highest levels. So I want to close by saying a word about President Trump. I think it's extremely important for people around the world to distinguish between President Trump and the war party who surrounds him in his own cabinet with people like Pompeo, who should go the way of John Bolton and Steve Bannon. These warmongers should be removed. But Trump himself was elected because he said he would reindustrialize the United States, that he would be friends with Russia, over and over he said that he wanted to be friends with China, which he did as soon as he was elected. This is the reason that the British MI6, Richard Dearlove, Christopher Steele launched Russiagate, Russia collusion, to break the danger to the empire that the United States and Russia and China would stop being enemies and start collaborating for development and for ending terrorism and so forth. That was the cause of Russiagate. When Russiagate failed, and when the people who orchestrated that hoax are now facing jail time because they deserve it for this lie, they launched Chinagate. China. China is responsible for everything. And it's unfortunately true that President Trump has been convinced that he needs to blame the pandemic on China, blame the economic crisis on China. He thinks he needs to do that probably to get elected. It's a mistake, but he personally, when he does his personal diplomatic relations, he steps beyond this controlled environment of the corrupt Congress, where both the Republicans and the Democrats are committed to war, are committed to regime change. But he personally, when he meets, if he meets, and we want that P5 meeting to take place in September, meeting with Xi Jinping, meeting with Vladimir Putin, the potential for ending this danger could be resolved. And I would call on you, your institutions, as well as your government, to speak out in favor of that P5 meeting taking place in September during the UN period as an absolutely urgent and essential step towards resolving this war danger, the economic danger, and bringing the world together through the Belt and Road process as a basis upon which we can actually achieve a new paradigm for mankind based on development and peace. And I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Billington. Very informative discussion. And I would like to welcome Mr. Ammar Jafri and Ms. Sadaf Khalid, who are the founders of SDG Academy. And they are the one who are behind this 13th and 14th August long initiative of this SDG Silk Road hackathon, which is going on. So I just want to move to our next panelist, and then I request Mr. Ammar Jafri and Ms. Sadaf Khalid to speak a few lines. Our next panelist is Professor Hassan Ma. He is an assistant professor of Prosperg State University. His teaching and research interests are China and its history and China foreign policy. And he focuses mainly on China relations with Central Asian republics, Middle East, and Pakistan. So over to Professor Ma.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Professor Ma.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you for inviting me to be here. And also it's nice to meet all my friends, old and new. And of course, it's always glad to talk about Pakistan, Central Asia, and their relationship with China. And I'm glad today our topic is really focused on Pakistan's geoeconomic positioning. We're not really talking about geopolitics, we talk about geoeconomics. And of course, we always talk about Belt and Road Initiative as the example of China, Central Asia, China, South Asian, China, even Middle Eastern cooperation as a way to develop an economy, to develop an industry, and of course, to improve living standard of many countries and regions. And of course, we just heard Mr. Hassan Daud and Mr. Billington to talk about world politics, world economy, and of course, the importance of Belt and Road Initiative in developing economy in Central Eurasia, in South Asia, and even beyond. And today, actually, I want to talk about the specific geoeconomic position of Pakistan in Himalaya and also Hindu Kush mountain range. Basically, I'm not really talking about grand strategy or a global economy. I'm really talking about regional and also from the perspective of local development especially Afghanistan, Pakistan, China, and even some other small neighbor countries in South Central Asia, or Central Asia and South Asia. And of course, if we look at the map of Pakistan, Afghanistan, and China, this is really wide range surrounded by mountain ranges, especially by Himalaya mountains and Hindu Kush mountains. And of course, one of the resources we always talk about is mineral resources. If you guys look at the map of Afghanistan, and also if we look at the map of Pakistan, the distribution of mineral resources actually really located in all these mountain ranges, especially Himalaya mountain in the north and Hindu Kush mountain in northwest. And of course, you can imagine for Afghanistan, we always talk about peace, we always talk about development. But of course, no countries, no companies seriously can invest in Afghanistan or northern Pakistan. And one of the reasons, of course, is of the security concern and also borderland issues. But actually, the bigger challenge I can say is the communication, a connectivity, a transportation. So basically, I'm arguing that if we want to develop specific regions and provinces bordering Afghanistan, Pakistan, and China, we really should focus on developing mineral resources. And of course, if we look at Afghanistan and Pakistan, all these mineral resources really distribute in two major areas. One is basically in northeast, from Afghanistan, China, Tajikistan, even Pakistan borderland, centered on Badakhshan. So that's why if you look at Amadaya River, basically from Badakhshan all the way to northwest, you have really huge mineral resources that really awaiting to be developed. But again, as far as I know, only one company from the US, JP Morgan, invested limited capital in Badakhshan to develop a specific mine. But other companies, of course, they really want to develop, but it's really difficult. As I said, one of the challenges is the transportation. And also, if you look at southwest, both in Afghanistan and Pakistan, we also find rich mineral resources, especially in Afghanistan. If you think about Ghazni provinces and all these, borderland provinces close to Pakistan, we really find really world-class mineral resources. But again, due to the limited access to outside the world, it's really difficult for international companies to invest, especially in all these borderland regions or provinces, both in Afghanistan and also northwest Pakistan. I'm not really talking about coastal regions, I'm really talking about interior regions. So that's why here I'm basically say, if we really help the local populations, either in Afghanistan and Pakistan, to benefit from this huge Belt and Road Initiative, we cannot simply say, you build highways, you build railways, because railways and highways, you really cannot reach local regions. You cannot really reach to local populations. But mineral resources, in terms of employment, in terms of private cooperation, that can really benefit local populations. And actually, I led 2 delegations visited Afghanistan 2 years ago, actually 3 years ago. We negotiated with Afghan government. We really look at the 2 major mines. One is in Ghazni province, the other one in Badakhshan and also Takhar province. But of course, as we mentioned in Afghanistan, we always concerned about security issue. But also the pragmatic challenge is the transportation. In northern Afghanistan, of course, you have to go all the way from China, Tajikistan, all the way to Uzbekistan, then from Mazar Sharif back to Takhar and even Badakhshan. This is really economically not really practical. So that's why some investors from China, they are basically private investors, not like a government, investors backed by state. So that's why they basically argued, how can we really transport all these machineries from China to Badakhshan, from China to Ghazni? Because if you have no state backing, it's really hard, right? So that's what they basically said, well, if there's a possible cooperation between China, Afghanistan, and Pakistan in their borderland. That is really easy. If you look at Badakhshan, basic Afghanistan, China, Pakistan, if you have some kind of, borderland economic zone, that can really develop the whole mineral mines in Badakhshan alone, which actually share not only by China, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, also connected Pakistan. So this is the northern route I would call. That was basically a huge potential to benefit all these regions and the peoples. And of course, we also know all these remote areas and the mountain areas or mountain ranges could be potential harbor for future terrorists. So that's a without developing economy. It's really hard to imagine how peace can be achieved, especially in all these remote areas. And of course, we also say in Pakistan and Balochistan, you also have this problem, poverty-driven terrorism, right? It's not really about ideology. For most peoples, as we say in Afghanistan, in Balochistan, even the Badakhshan regions, many of the people, they basically participate in all these terrorist acts or groups simply because they want to make a living. This is not really about global jihadism or about really, not about religious extremism. Of course, governments tend to frame their activities in all these, terms. But if you go to all these regions, local villages, local provinces, you really see the biggest challenge is really the economy, living, standard. So that's why if you look at Pakistan as well, as I said, the mineral resources distributed basically from northeast to southwest. And of course, for southwest, it's easy to access to maritime transportation, either through, Qatar or through Karachi. But for northeast, for example, the regions close to Afghanistan, especially close to Badakhshan, all these regions, of course, with rich mineral resources, but it's really hard to develop, especially, as I said, you have no railways or highways connect all these regions, and no private investor will come. So that's why when we talk about geo-economic positioning of Pakistan, I'm not really thinking, of course, government already built all these highways, railways, ports, right? But now the next step, of course, I think is really to build connectivity with local regions, mountain regions, to develop the resources they have. Otherwise, you cannot expect some borderland populations can benefit from Gwadar port or benefit from, Kashgar, Gwadar railway. So that's why when you look at all these regions from northern Afghanistan to northern Pakistan, I see the great potential to develop economies through exploring all these mineral mines. Again, if we look at some typical mines, the Afghanistan, Badakhshan, represented by Place Gold, then to Ghazni province and other, provinces connecting Pakistan, and also northern Pakistan, northeast Pakistan. If we build some kind of economical, not really freedom, but basically provide access to local peoples in terms of transportation, in terms of market, in terms of machinery, in terms of personnel. So I would think all these borderland areas or interior regions or even mountain areas, there's a huge potential. Remember, in the past 2 years, when I led the delegation from China, they really promised to invest $2 billion just in 2 mines in Badakhshan regions and also in Ghazni province close to Pakistan, actually even further to the east. But the real challenge, again, as I said, there's no access to transport machinery. If you transport from Uzbekistan, all this, Central Asian country, first of all, it's really too far. Second of all, it's not really safe enough. But Pakistan, in this sense, actually can provide access to many provinces, regions, even villages in borderland regions, not only with Afghanistan, but also with China. And of course, as we know recently, there was an accident occurred actually between Afghanistan and Pakistan. I forgot the name of the borderland checkpoint. It's Tokhat. You can imagine how African people really want to, have access to market, to transportation, right? But if Pakistan and China, Afghanistan can open some kind of borderland, access a borderland market in northern Afghanistan, northern Pakistan, all these regions can be connected, especially through developing mineral mines. So this is my field research and some personal observation about connectivities, about Pakistan's geo-economic positioning, and really local peoples, not only from Pakistan, not only from Afghanistan, even from China, they really hope to have some kind of connectivity in all these three countries' borderline to develop their economy. Without benefiting local people, without developing their economy, I really cannot see how peace can be completely achieved at every level, from village to county to province, because we cannot simply talk about national relations or international relations. We really have to look at how local people, how private partners, they can benefit, not really look at the state company, not really look at international company. So this is the thought I have about Pakistan's economic position, especially in borderland between China, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Ma. A very informative discussion, and you rightly said that social benefits to the community is something which is very important as with the economic collaborations and connectivity. Thank you very much, Professor Ma. We are going to have a question and answer session, but before that, I would like to welcome our worthy senior advisor of Center of Pakistan and International Relations, Mr. Khalid Mahmood Saab, who is here. He's also the chairman of Institute of Strategic Studies. Thank you for joining, sir. And now I would like to move to our person who is behind this 13th and 14th event. First of all, I request Ms. Sadaf Khalid, who is the CEO of STG Academy, and this STG Silk Road Initiative, she is the main part in it. So I request Ms. Sadaf Khalid, so please explain what's going on 13th and 14th, and then I request my dear friend Amar Jaffrey to then greet the guests. Please, Sadaf.
Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Amna. I've been hearing, actually, I'm in a parallel discussion. I'm representing the STDs Academy of Pakistan from Islamabad. Sir Amar Jaffrey is the chairman of the STDs Academy. And we announced the webathon for 52 hours nonstop. We have parallel discussion right now with our international stakeholders, STD Silk Road, which is called the Global Impact Journey 52-hour session. Now, the reason why we chose the topic SDGs linking the Sustainable Development Goals to the SDG Silk Road is because it's not just about, as one of the discussion was already taking place, it's about the BRI One Belt. It includes 64 countries. Very senior panelists are having a very good discussion. And my discussion in this webinar will be that why not Pakistan involve all our embassies, our cultural diplomacy cells to encourage this initiative with the neighboring countries, with Afghanistan, with Central Asian countries, with the Russian countries, with the Asian countries. And as we speak of Sustainable Development Goals is United Nations Agenda 2030, leaving no one behind. So we can work to the diplomatic missions, to the cultural diplomacy policy, to encourage the public-private partnership, to work with the community, and to raise our voice. So that is the reason we took this initiative, and a very good response is coming up for this webinar, and a lot of global stakeholders, including Norway and Sweden, is the most important, and they're working for the Sustainable Development Goals, including Philippines, Algeria, Australia, US, and many other countries are participating. So it will be wonderful to see the response linking the Sustainable Development Goals to the Silk Road development projects from Pakistan. So that's all from my side, and I hope I will be getting the minutes of this meeting. So Amna Malik, thank you so much for connecting us to the global stakeholders, and we need to work together on a unified policy with the government, and as a private sector, we're always there to support the development projects from Pakistan to the global stakeholders. Thank you so much.
Wish you good luck, Sadaf Khalid, for your wonderful initiative, and we pray for your success and more partners to be included in your initiative. I request now my very dear friend, we work for e-Pakistan, and he's the one who is the founder of Digital Pakistan and also the chairman of SDG Academy and also the chairman and founder of SDG Silk Road Initiative. Amar Jafri headed many important government positions. He is also our advisor on public policy and government advocacy on different policies. So I request Amar Jafri Saab, because tomorrow is Independence Day and all these things are going on, to feel pride that we are Pakistani nation, and how important is our country and belt in this Silk Road, how we can play our role as a Pakistani. So over to Amar Saab. Please unmute
Thank
your
you.
mic.
Yeah. Okay. Am I audible? Very clear audible?
Didi.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Amna Malik. Thank you, Kopier, for inviting us here. You know, last year I had a chance to go to China, and there they took us to the BRI headquarters. There I got this idea that this is the 21st century Silk Road. So when we were conceiving this project of SDGs, and we were trying to make this hackathon for 3 days, me, Sadaf, and our foreign partners, we thought about linking with Silk Road. So that these 3 days conference is like SDG Silk Road. You know, to my understanding, this is going to transform the entire world, because BRI is already connected with 64 countries, and this is really a 21st century Silk Road. It will transform the economic situation in the world, because to my understanding, Industrial Revolution 4.0 is already there. And if we have a bandwidth which is going along the side of the CPAC and BRI, I'm very positive that these 2 initiatives, SDGs and this Silk Road, 21st century Silk Road, is going to benefit Pakistan, and especially our very near friend China with all these things. You know, we intend to go into digital agriculture. The speaker before me were absolutely right. We have to go to the blue economy, because we have got a very huge coastal line. We have to go into the circular economy. And immediately, once we are finished with it, Amna Malik, with your organization, we intend to do like artificial intelligence on Silk Road, IoT for Silk Road, like blockchain on Silk Road, like IR 4.0 on Silk Road. These are the initiatives. You know very well that we are already into it. We have got a team of all these things. But if we link it with 21st century Silk Road, I think we will have a global attention, and definitely we will have a chance to work with the global communities. To all the panelists in this valuable talk you are doing it, I think they are all very well aware of the fact that SDG 17 talks about the networks. Now, I think there will be 2 types of the countries, one who are working in coordination with every other country, and one who are working in isolation. I think everybody is clear in Pakistan, we do not want to work in isolation. And I think one of the panelists talked about the controlling the terrorism, especially in Balochistan. Through this forum, I would like to tell that I am also a part of the National Initiative on Organized Crimes, in which very senior police officers are working. You know, the first agenda is to control terrorism, especially on the lines of the BRI and CPAC. So,
Amar Saab, kindly unmute kar
we are with you in this initiative. Amna Malik, I'm really thankful to you again for inviting us here. And you know very well, me and Sadaf are working in parallel. But we thought to come together and join in your effort.
Yeah.
We stand together. Thank you, Amna Malik. Thank you so kind.
God bless you. God bless you. Now, if anybody from our panelists and attendees, if they have any questions for the worthy speakers from Mr. Billington, from Mr. Ma, or from Hassan Daud Saab, so they can ask the question and then we move to the next panelist. Is there any question anybody would like to ask? The attendees can also ask the question while typing. So Iram, can you see among the panelists, is there any question?
There are like few questions over here
Just read
from
it out.
from Arusa Salahuddin. What are the implications of the geo-economic social geography of BRI as Chinese infrastructure projects create new geo-economic connectivity through corridors in various territories across the globe? How much it will be beneficial for Euro-Asian region? Yeah, this is the question, and I think anyone who wants to answer that from the panelists.
Mr. Billington, yes, please.
Yeah, the Euro-Asian region, I think it's an extremely important question because China, there is a severe economic breakdown crisis taking place in Europe and the United States. This was before the pandemic. It's only been aggravated by the pandemic. And China has quite graciously offered to invest enormously in infrastructure in Eastern Europe, in Central Europe, in East and also in the United Kingdom. And the response that you see today from London primarily, and unfortunately also from the anti-China hysteria taking place in the United States, is to dramatically, illegally threaten nations in Europe, as well as in other parts of the world, that they must not work with the Belt and Road or they will be punished. The effort to sabotage Huawei, which is by far and away the leading IT company in the world, the most advanced 5G, an example of the kind of transformation that has taken place in China. And yet this is being used illegally to threaten countries, and they've unfortunately succeeded in stopping Boris Johnson, who was resisting this. But the threats coming from Pompeo, who is right now, by the way, touring Central and Eastern Europe with threats not to accept China's offer to build railroads. This is going against Russia as well. The Pompeo crowd are threatening a port city in Germany that if they allow Russian ships that are building the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, that if they allow them to use their port, they will be bankrupted by the US. This is a threat coming from Pompeo and from the Commerce Department. These are threatening not just economic dissolution, but global strategic crisis. So in my view, in the view of the Schiller Institute and EIR, it is urgent that all nations on earth denounce this kind of counter Belt and Road operation by doing exactly what you're doing here today, holding conferences, mobilizing your own populations and populations around the world to understand that the world needs immediately to come together for economic development through the Belt and Road idea, this concept of a new Silk Road, the cultural concept as well as the economic concept, in order to prevent the breakdown into a geopolitical war, which could end civilization as we know it today. So the urgency of your question, I think, is that that's my answer.
Can I put my 2 cents in on this, please?
Sure, Daud sir.
You see, we need to fundamentally understand the difference of ideology now, which is coming forth from West and where we are. You know, in Asia, clearly we're talking about inclusiveness, we're talking about regional integration. We're in the West. They are talking about protectionist approach, and this is clearly is a difference. Now look at, for example, nations close to China and bordering China, ASEAN, for example, and if you look at their economic relevance, it has largely to do with their trade with China and say, for instance, Malaysia, Vietnam, kind of investment that has gone into Vietnam and Malaysia from Chinese enterprises, and of course Pakistan also. So this fundamental difference in terms of understanding human growth from where we are to perhaps next century would take the West away from development and perhaps would integrate us better with our economies, largely in Asia doing well. Look at smaller nations, like look at Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, just there with their integration with China. They are doing phenomenally well, and if Pakistan can emulate, and because since your discussion today is largely about Pakistan's geo-economic positioning, I think Pakistan can emulate that model in terms of bringing good tangible security and also ensuring ease of doing business, and let West do what they want to do. I hope there will be no war. I understand what Mr. Mike is alluding to, but I wish and hope that there would be peace largely, and if pandemic goes away, we can still bring trade. You see, India and China are linked in terms of trade and in terms of the volume of trade that they are doing. So if you take trade out and bring in regional conflicts, perhaps this would take us nowhere. So I think BRI brings us closer and gives us a reason to work closely in Asia. Let's just focus on Asia and our regional integration. And then perhaps, of course, we are not an island state and we cannot work as an island, but let's look at our development. And I said earlier, and in terms of SDGs also, it's extremely important that we become rich now and protect ourselves from external forces based on our economic growth.
Thank you, Daud Saab. Now we move to our session because we are having another worthy panelist who is supposed to go. I request Dr. Riaz Ahmed, who is the Assistant Professor at the School of Public Policy and Administration, Jiantong University, China. His research areas include China, international relations, and national security. Today, his topic of discussion is something very important: China-Pakistan geo-economic merge with political and social economic approaches. So I request Dr. Riaz, please.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thanks to the host for giving me the opportunity to learn from the prestigious speaker, especially thank to ma'am Asma Malik and Sir Khalid Latif to strengthen more the friendship up to Iron brother. Now I come towards my topic. Is the time is limited, so my topic for today is China and Pakistan join hand to fight against coronavirus, fight against poverty to stable the socio-economic development. My topic is comprised on 3 parts. The first part is where to go next. The second part is what we are facing. And the third is what we did and what we can do in the future. For the first part, where to go next, generally speaking, there are 5 stages of corridor in the evaluation of corridor included CPEC, transport corridor, logistic corridor, trade corridor, economic corridor, and development are growth corridor. We will focus on the last 2 stages of corridor here that are economic corridors and development are growth corridors. One of the key features defining economic corridor is their ability to attract investment and generate economic activities along an area or region. Yet to achieve this, physical connectivity and logistic facilitation must be in the place. In the last stage of corridor, development or growth corridor, economic development or growth corridor are frequently implied in the interchangeable manner. Development or growth corridor could also be interpreted as those where non-economic element, etc., health system, environment protection, and cultural dimension, these elements have been added to economic initiatives. Now, from some perspective, CPEC is working towards these stages. After the first stage of CPEC, many mega infrastructure, logistic, trade projects have done and promoted the socio-economic development of Pakistan and China. For the second phase, the investment strategy and cooperative should shift to the field of education, health, and poverty alleviation. But now, since the COVID-19 coronavirus is the biggest challenge for the second phase of CPEC in the coming years, it is also the biggest threat for the socio-economic development of the countries all over the world. So here comes the question, what we can do to push CPEC go further. Let's see what we did and what we can do in the future. Since the outbreak of coronavirus, China and Pakistan have been cooperating with each other in order to defeat and fight against the virus together. Although a huge number of Pakistani students were studying in Wuhan, Pakistan, unlike so many other countries, did not abandon them because Pakistan believed in China's capacity in order to handle the health crisis. As we have seen after the tremendous effort done by Chinese officials and medical workers, COVID-19 has been defeated and controlled in China. The leadership of both countries emphasized cooperation and declared coronavirus as a common enemy of both nations. Pakistan is all-weather strategic cooperation partner of China. After the epidemic broke out, Pakistan immediately expressed its solidarity with China by sending coronavirus-related donation and assistance to China in the early stages of the epidemic, and same the China did. Wuhan went into complete lockdown on January 23, 2020 in order to stop the further spread of the virus. Pakistan is a neighbor and friendly state and now assistant Chinese government to fight against this invisible enemies. Pakistan ambassador in China said in her video message that Pakistan and China are time-tested all-weather strategic cooperative partner, and we are committed to building a closer Pakistan-China community of shared future in the new era. This is the symbol of cooperation between the two neighboring and partner countries. Chinese ambassador in Pakistan, Yu Jing, delivered a message and said the Chinese government have been ensuring safety and health of all foreigners as we treat our own citizens and pay special attention to the treatment of foreigners in China. Pakistan is a true friend of China, especially in the difficult situation. The Chinese people have got strong support from Pakistan in dealing with the epidemic. And now I come to conclusion of my topic. I think the decision of lockdown in Wuhan was not easy, but China's central government took immediate action in order to stop the spread of this virus, and the same done by the Pakistani government. I personally appreciate this decision because it saved the precious life of Chinese citizens as well as Pakistani citizens. The quick establishment of 1,000-bed hospital within 10 days and medical teams arrived in Wuhan from other provinces of China in order to help the provincial medical sector and treatment all over. All services, severe cases and minor impacted patients should be appreciated. The medical terms conducted regular testing of every suspected person, put them in isolation, and most importantly, they separated critical patient and patient with minor symptoms. That's why the further spread stop and recovery rate is much higher than the mortality. I personally want to admire the people of their cooperation as responsible citizens with medical and government authorities. Pakistan has followed China's strategy and initially locked down some cities and banned gathering, but the coronavirus cases increased and the Prime Minister of Pakistan announced a complete lockdown for some time. Pakistan government took some quick action and established several quarantine centers in all provinces. These responses may help to successfully defeat and control the invisible enemy in the country. As we know, that no country will be safe until every country is safe. So we need coordination and cooperation, especially in the field of public health, exchange project, research project, conferences, and seminars to build a closer Pakistan-China community of shared future in the new era. Thank you very much. This is my talk for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Riaz. And then now our another speaker is Syed Inamur Rahman. He is the assistant professor at the International Islamic University, Islamabad. His topic of discussion will be role and challenges of media and suggestions for policymakers and stakeholders in countering the negative propaganda and how to set the agenda in favor of Pakistan. Over to Dr. Inam, please. Dr. Syed Inamur Rahman Sahab, you are there? I think you need to unmute your mic. I think he's not here. So Iram, oh, he's here. He's here. Ji, Dr. Saab, we can see you. But we can't hear you. जी, अब आप unmute कर दें. आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही. We can't hear you. आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही, डॉक्टर साहब. We can't hear you. We can't hear you, Syed Inam Saab.
Amna, I think he has problem in the maybe in the connection.
आप
Internet
अगर
connection.
reconnect कर लिए इनाम साहब, तब तक इरम आप speakers की तरफ अपने मुंह
जी,
कर
जी.
जाएं. We can
Sure.
we can add your
Yes. So basically, like we have so many guests today, and now I would just like to invite Dr. Bashir. He's the principal at Behriya Business School, Karachi, and associate dean, management sciences at Behriya University, Karachi. He's author of 4 books: Evolution and Application in Our Environments, Organizational Performance Excellence and Quality Management, Dilemma of the Third World, and few more books. I would like Dr. Bashir to please comment on, like, how do you think that Pakistan geopolitical importance is there in all this BRI initiative, and how Behriya University is playing its role in the Belt and Road Initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you, everybody. I'm Dr. Bashir. In fact, I will very briefly, because the time is very less, I shall be highlighting some of the points specific to Pakistan only.
We have time, Bashir sir. We have time, please. We have time.
Okay.
And
That's
we are
very
there
nice
to
of you.
listen to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. In fact, there is a book. I'm one of the author of that book. That book has been co-authored about Belt and Road Initiative. And my chapter is about misgivings and resolve for Pakistan about the CPAC and the BRI. A lot of discussion has gone in. In fact, so far I have listened to a number of speakers here. And you see, what I could visualize from the discussion focus is, I mean, it is a global perspective we are talking about. There is no doubt that, and there is no denial of the fact that the CPAC is the main component of Belt and Road Initiative of China. And I would say to an extent that without CPAC, probably the initiative is not complete. The Belt and Road Initiative remains incomplete without CPAC. It's so important. But purely talking from Pakistan perspective of view, I have 2 points to offer. One is what we say, the comparing ourselves with China. Because we talk about Chinese strategies, Chinese initiative, Chinese economic policy. China is too big a country, in fact. Instead of, I mean, there is no comparison between China and Pakistan, and we cannot put our feet into the shoes of the China, because China is a much bigger country in every aspect, and they have different dimensions to flourish, to flow in. They have different objectives. We have to be very specific in Pakistan about what our objectives could be. This is one thing we have to understand. We have to de-link ourselves from the strategic aspirations, geopolitical dimensions of Chinese strategy in BRI, and the other corridor where CPAC is one of the corridors. One, we have to keep that in mind. Then I think we would be able to understand in a better way. The second point is that this Belt and Road Initiative and CPAC, fundamentally, it provides what we say the strategic communication infrastructure. Now, how good we are in making use of that infrastructure, nothing would go wrong with the Chinese. It is Pakistan's government, the people of Pakistan, they have to decide how best they should be using that the infrastructure support, in fact, for the economic development with Chinese initiative is providing. Again, here, what I could see in some of the studies, some of the discussion, that probably China would be coming forward to make social development, socio-economic development for Pakistan. We at times, I feel that probably have much more expectations beyond the business world, what we have. In fact, that we have to understand that this is the strategic communication infrastructure, and we are here to make use of that. And we have to deal with the initiative in a very professional manner, setting aside those, deep-rooted relationship, because in business, we talk about the business. In fact, there are the emotional attachment to the relationship, they have lesser relevance. The third point I want to highlight flowing from these 2 points, which we have to be very clear in Pakistan, that whatever initiative we make, whatever program we develop, it has to be people-centric, in fact. You see this Gwadar port has come on ground for the last about 15, 16, 17 years. And we are talking about the initiative, we are talking about the infrastructure development. What we have to look for and we have to focus on is, how can we measure it? That is basically what trickles down to the people in terms of social development, in terms of development of the education infrastructure, in terms of development of the health infrastructure, in development, in terms of talking about the entrepreneurship opportunities, in terms of creation of jobs for that particular purpose, in fact. So those are basically the people-centric initiatives which any initiative, which any corridor, which any kind of strategic communication link that has to be kept in mind. What I have understood from the economic development initiatives of the government is, initiative of different countries, is that when we put aside the people's interest, by majority, I would say those projects, they do not succeed in longer term. So when we talk of the CPAC, we have to keep in mind that we have to keep our objectives very, very limited, confining ourselves to the the characteristics of the Pakistan people, the potentials of Pakistan's economy. You see, we are a declining economy. We have a problem of unemployment in Pakistan. We have the problems of lack of entrepreneurship opportunities for the youth. We have other problems like that, like the developing world, we have those problems. So those problems we have to keep in mind. And another problem which is specific to Pakistan is that we have a very different kind of neighbor on the Eastern Front. India is a different country. Different kind of relation we have. And in terms of making a block on the geopolitical stage also, China and India, they are different countries, they have different kind of relations. Again, if we have to go for economic development of the people of Pakistan, probably for the time being, we have to keep ourselves aside from what is happening with China and India. And we may be focusing more on the economic and the social development of the people of Pakistan. I look at CPAC as a great opportunity in terms of providing communication, connectivity, infrastructure for Pakistan, and particularly for the people of Pakistan. And I would say the success that hinges on one very important thing, that we need to focus inward instead of focusing outward. We have to be more operationalized, looking inward instead of talking about what happens in the global world, what happens strategically, even in the regional context. we may not be that kind of, we do not have that kind of resources to look on. So my focus has been that we should be talking about the CPEC purely from the business point of view, the business opportunities, the development opportunities point of view. So there is a need to, I mean, probably we have to reorientate ourselves in Pakistan from the CPEC in case we want to get really the benefits of this this initiative of China, and we should be looking toward the people. And I would frankly say that we may be able to carry out some kind of analysis for the last about 15 years. How much has been the social development, the rise in the social index of the people of Pakistan, particularly the people of Balochistan, in terms of employment, in terms of the other social development initiatives which have been taken, the benefit which has gone to the people of Balochistan and people of Pakistan. I think we have to take all these things in mind, and we have to be looking inward and focusing on purely, I would say, a business point of view and economic development of the CPEC and the BR. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Bashir. Thank you. I hope my voice is clear now.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thanks. I'm listening.
Yes. Thank you so much for your time, precious time, and your contribution. And now I would like to invite Uruj Ejaz. She's a National Coordinator of Blue Economy by IRP, Member Advisory Board IRP by UMT Lahore, Faculty Department of Management Studies, Bahria University, Karachi. Uruj, I would like you to please comment on how do you guys basically analyze the whole situation of Pakistan as it's having a geopolitics importance in this BRI. And again, I would like you to comment how you at Bahria University, with the department you are heading, that is the blue economy, and the initiatives you all are heading towards with that science and technology park, maritime science and technology park. So what do you see, what is the importance of Pakistan and how you guys are contributing towards it? Thank you. Over to you.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank Sustainable Development Goals Academy for the invite, and thankful, very much thankful to touch the topic which I really close to my heart. And many discussions have already done ho gaye.
Uruj, your mic is muted, I guess. I think Uruj lost the connectivity, so we will wait for Uruj. Hello.
We can wait for her, and
yes, yes, Amna, you can take another guest.
Yeah.
Mr.
I just request Ambassador Khalid Mahmood that you have certain observation about this webinar and on this specific topic. We have been working on Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We have been working on Belt and Road Initiative, and you are a very close friend of China because you were there as an ambassador, and I saw that how the Chinese people love you because of your love for Pak-China relations. So we would like you to shed some light on it.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I must thank you, Ms. Amna Malik, for inviting me to make some observations on the topic of the seminar, webinar rather. that is Pakistan's geo-economic importance among Belt and Road countries. We have heard speakers telling us about the importance of BRI and how it is playing out in the given geopolitical scenario in the world. But I would stick to the topic, Pakistan's geo-economic importance. Not that how much importance this has for Pakistan or for other countries, but how for Pakistan is important in this BRI. First is that, as you know, there are two parts of BRI. One is the land routes, the other is the sea route. And there are 6 land routes and 1 maritime Silk Road, that is the sea route. And it is only in Pakistan that both routes meet in Gwadar. Other 6 land routes, they have different directions, different trajectory. Some just remain land-based, some just remain sea-based, But land route and sea route, they interconnect at Gwadar through the CPEC land route and maritime Silk Route. This is one importance of Pakistan. Secondly, that CPEC goes through or traverses only one other country. So it is a bilateral project. Not that it is other land routes go through, say, China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Europe, or Iran, Afghanistan. So more than one country is involved. So if in any project, if there are more countries involved, there are always more problems to deal with, So here in CPEC, it is only Pakistan. It starts from China and enters Pakistan. No country in between. They don't have to contend with the differing legal regimes, custom regime, different, So it is that usefulness of Pakistan. Thirdly, it is the shortest route available to China to reach the Arabian Sea, the Persian Gulf, from where China imports the large portion of its energy requirements. Other routes are very long. It is the shortest route. And another factor is that this is the pilot project of BRI. And it is the fastest progressing project. If, God forbid, this project doesn't succeed, the whole other ventures under the BRI, they will be affected. So it is a pilot project. It is in the interest of China, it is the interest of Pakistan that this project succeeds. So that is the importance of CPEC in Pakistan. Its success will depend the success of other 6 land routes and the maritime Silk Road. Then I think another Pakistan's importance in this context is that it reinforces China's outreach, not only to Pakistan, but to the adjoining areas, to Afghanistan, Central Asia. Of course, there are other routes also, but this is the shortest, and the Persian Gulf and Africa and beyond. So in my view, this CPEC is the fulcrum of the overall grandiose BRI project. And for Pakistan, of course, as has been pointed out by so many speakers, it is of utmost importance. But for China also, it is of great importance. It will help China to God forbid if the route through Malacca Strait is interrupted, but it will ensure China energy supplies through the pipelines to be played between Persian Gulf, Pakistan, and China. So this was all I wanted to say, that Pakistan, as I said, is the fulcrum of the BRI project. On its success will depend the success of other land routes as well as maritime Silk Road. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Khalid Saab. Iram, if Ms. Arooj is coming, or you have some question you asked, then I would like to conclude it.
Yeah. Arooj just messaged me that she's trying to connect. I think she's having some trouble in connecting. Okay, I have like few questions. I will just read out one by one, and whoever panelist wants to answer.
I suggest Iram, you
Okay.
ask all the questions. Iram, my request, you ask all the questions, because we have less panelists and we would like to move towards recommendation. Yes.
Sure. Okay, sure. So one of the very important question, I think we living in Pakistan, we should be asking ourselves to all the stakeholders is about Balochistan. Balochistan, which is like scheduled to play an important role in CPEC. It is the largest province and has many natural resources. However, the Baloch, they have the lowest standard of living of any ethnic group in Pakistan, and they kind of feeling alienated from the Pakistani power structure. What's the plan in this CPEC to include Balochistan so that the province can play their role and benefit from the project? Because what we all believe as Pakistanis, that the fate of the project in Balochistan is key to the ultimate success of CPEC, since the use of the port of Gwadar is one of the project's key element. This is one of the question, and I think there are a few questions in our list. I just read it out. Saddam is asking, my name is Saddam Hussain, and my question is for Mike. How Trump's policy to punish China by sanction will impact BRI? It is already seen that projects around the world are under the BRI slowed down. Okay, then Russa is asking, I think, yeah, this is done. Then there's a question from Ikra Riazuddin. India has a border maritime territory as compared to broader maritime territory as compared to Pakistan. India has made various multilateral coalitions and agreements with extra regional and Indian Ocean littoral states. Please shed some light on the options for Pakistan to counter hegemonic maritime strategy of India with the help of China under BRI. So these are the few questions. I would like different panelists to choose and how they want to reply to these questions. Thank you.
Hassan Daud Saab, regarding Balochistan, you have a better idea, and regarding Trump, Mike can speak well. Or we can request Dr. Bashir Ahmed Saab.
Okay, fine. First of all, you need to understand the planning mechanism of the countries in Asia and also in Southeast Asia. If you look at the development plans, 5-year development plan of China and also of Pakistan, and yearly development plan of both the countries. In fact,
please speak out loudly, Hassan Saab, we can't hear you.
Okay. So I was saying that, for this, the answer to this lies in understanding the planning fundamentals of both the countries, especially China and Pakistan, and also largely of all Asian and Southeast Asian countries. So if you look at that, you would find that it is about poverty alleviation, it is about rural-urban synergy, it is about socio-economic development, and it's about uplifting the less developed regions within their own respective countries. So with this, if you understand this and if you agree to this vision, you would understand how Balochistan falls in the entire spectrum of CPEC planning. Yes, it's about Gwadar, and who else would explain it better than Ambassador Khalid, who is himself the champion of CPEC and is actually one of the planners who were involved in planning of CPEC initiative. But the point that I would like to highlight is that through CPEC, and largely if you look at the vision, synergy and vision of both the leaders of our countries in China, Xi Jinping, and in here Prime Minister Imran Khan, you would see that they converge at the point of development of less developed areas of their country. Say in China, it is northwest, and also in Pakistan, it's the western entire strip, not just Balochistan, but also going towards southern KP. If you look at southern KP, DI Khan, and southward, you would see those areas need development attention, and also central Punjab. So with this in mind, now look at CPEC and look at the overall vision. Let's take ML1 as a case study. So ML1 and ML2 and ML3 will ML1 we will connect and bring in a cheaper form of transportation. And that would connect from Karachi all the way to Peshawar and even perhaps till Landikot. But then in ML2, we will have a shorter version, which will connect directly from KPK to Balochistan, and then connecting it all the way to Zaidan, which is a tourist route in terms of religious tourism in close to Gwadar and Balochistan. So this and now the socio-economic development that is taking shape because of Gwadar Port in Lasbela district, electricity coming. I'm sure you know that as we speak, electricity comes from Iran. So now when we'll have a 300 megawatt project, it will accelerate the entire process of development in that Lasbela region, and including the coastal belt. And that is why we are now talking about, and we have the luxury and liberty to talk about maritime tourism in that area, because that comes as a luxury when people have enough food to eat and then electricity to promote to run the appliances that you need for tourism. Then only you can attract foreign and domestic tourists, isn't it? So in that case, Balochistan is pivotal to the development agenda of entire Pakistan and also the western strip of Pakistan, hugging the Afghan border also. And in that respect, brings out the overall economic development agenda of Belt and Road Initiative. You know, you can't make richer more richer, isn't it? It's about making poorer richer, bringing facilities to less developed regions in line with the urbanization that is happening. You can't just continue to have more urban centers. You need more. You just can't have the existing urban centers to sprawl and expand. You need new urban centers, and you need less cities and towns to develop in line. So this is what CPEC is doing through this connectivity. And I said earlier, through by building roads, you become rich. This is Confucius saying, say about 2,000, 3,000 years from today. And this is how Balochistan will emerge as central to our economy, with Gwadar connecting not just with the entire Pakistan, but also with regional port. Kashgar, the Iranian port, the ports in Middle East, and then connecting the trade synergy, the maritime trade synergy that is essentially required as we speak. So coming from Western China, going all the way to Balochistan, and then from there, all trade activities happening towards Middle East, and then going from Egypt to Europe. This is the entire plan, and inshallah, God willing, we will achieve this, and Balochistan will develop whether somebody likes it or not.
Thank you, Daud Saab. I request Mike to speak about Trump and the question. Can you, Iram, repeat it, or you remember the question?
Yes, no, I heard the question. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, please go ahead.
I think that if this decoupling between the US and China, if this continues, let alone if there were a war, it would be a disaster for Pakistan and for every other country in the world. I appreciate what Mr. Hassan Daud said earlier about saying that Pakistan should focus on Asia, that we're not an island, but we should develop Asia. And of course, Asia right now is the core of global development, centered on China, but really all of Asia. But that won't work. We have a very, very severe crisis in the world and within the United States. The United States has just been through 3.5 years of a coup attempt against President Trump, run by the British with the full support of the Democrat Party and many of the Republicans who claim to be supporters of Trump, but who have prevented him from pulling out of the wars, who have prevented him from being friends with Russia and China. I would argue that if we don't, we meaning all of you, my own organization, all of us human beings, if we don't act now to reverse the decline of the United States, which is under attack, it's been turned into an anti-China McCarthyite hysteria, and it's also experiencing an insurrection on the streets by anarchists, by people who are not fighting for Black Lives Matter. This is a hoax. These are anarchists who are trying to tear down the government and tear down the development of the United States and eventually the world. This is a dangerous situation, but as the Chinese always do say, a great crisis is also a great opportunity. And indeed, it is a tremendous opportunity because of the special character of Donald Trump. He is not the one who launched this vicious anti-China campaign. He has unfortunately adopted it for political reasons. As I said, it's a mistake. But I am convinced that the tremendous potential that the Belt and Road in particular represents, the idea of truly addressing the common aims of all mankind, and it does. This is the basis on which peace through development can replace British imperial geopolitics. Dog eat dog, Malthusian depopulation, Darwinian conflict. It's a moment in history in which the era of empire can be finally extinguished throughout the world. That we have an opportunity to bring together the great nations, Russia, China, India, Pakistan, Japan, the United States, Mexico, Brazil, all of whom are suffering tremendous crises. And yet it is a moment in which through the Belt and Road and through what we propose as a new Bretton Woods, bringing the world together to replace this bankrupt financial bubble with a financial system like that originally designed by Alexander Hamilton and as imagined by Franklin Roosevelt. If he had not died, I think the IMF and the World Bank would have been very, very different institutions, would have been development institutions rather than sponsoring the return of colonialism, which is what happened after the war, rather than Roosevelt's dream of ending colonies once and for all. Instead, we had 30 years of colonial wars in Vietnam and so forth. So I would argue that we can and we must stop this anti-China mobilization led by Mike Pompeo and others of his ilk. But the way to do it is exactly what you're doing here today and what we're trying to do. We can and we must inspire nations and individuals throughout the world to see that this is a moment where we dare not allow the continued division of East and West. We cannot allow the United States to descend into some sort of a fascist entity. We can and we must bring the world together. And again, I reiterate, I really sincerely call on all of you to publicly voice your call for this P5 summit, for President Trump, President Xi Jinping, and President Putin, along with Macron and Boris Johnson, but especially those three. to come together next month, this time now, before the US presidential election, and to address these problems as solvable problems that can bring about a true renaissance for mankind, and not a war. So that's my answer.
Yes, thank you very much, Mike. I think what you have said is valid, that we need to raise more voices, because if there is an issue of global peace, so we need to talk about it. And you rightly said earlier that BRI is developing a new global ecosystem, and which is bringing connectivity with Asia and Europe. And you rightly said that it's very important to develop such kind of forums of where we can have the dialogue and interaction and discuss the various challenges of BRI on one hand, and also the China containment policy. And you mentioned about that apartheid, that there is some hysterical stances from certain elements of US government. So I believe that we all need to raise our voice in this regard, and because because we are having this many nuclear powers, and at this time this is not safe that we do not raise our voice. And finally, I just request all of you, because Aruj is still trying to enter. Aruj, if you are entered, so please speak few words, because then we would like to continue.
Aruj is here.
Please, Aruj.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Sorry, I have some internet issue. I would like to highlight some basic points, basically. As we all discussed already, that geopolitical and geo-economic forces are now moving from west to east. And if we talk about the Asia, then Asia is always a place where cultural divides exist. So it is very important for us to connect the cultural divides. And I think the cultural divides are only connected through BRI. And the cultural, we have to focus on either physical connectivity, or we are talking about the digital connectivity, or we can talk about the person-to-person connectivity is also necessary for us. So if I talk about the, as Dr. Bashir said, that BRI is incomplete without the CPEC. And I think CPEC is incomplete without the maritime infrastructure. If I talk about the maritime infrastructure, I mean, maritime infrastructure obviously reflect the blue economy.
Kindly unmute your mic, Aruj, please. Kindly unmute your mic, please. I think she's again not here. So, Idam, if you allow, so should we conclude?
Yeah, I guess she's having some problems.
Yeah.
So we can continue.
So thank you very much for all the panelists who are over here. As we mentioned, that this is a new paradigm, it's a new world economic order which BRI initiative bring. We discussed about social development goals. We discussed that it's very important to have people-to-people interaction. And this is a new paradigm for the common interest of mankind, what Mr. Mike mentioned about it. So I just want that, just give your final words. I request Mike, Khalid Saab, Hassan Daud Saab, Bashir Ahmed Saab, and if Aruj joins, and Iram, then just give your final concluding words so that we conclude this session. Over to Mr. Mike, please. How we save the world and how we continue BRI and how important Pakistan will be.
Yes, well, actually, I'll commend you for this meeting. I was delighted to have the chance to meet people like Mr. Hassan Daud and the former ambassador, Mr. Mahmoud. I didn't realize they'd be on, so I was delighted to see this and to hear them. And as I said, I think this kind of event can be globalized as much as you possibly can. I also will say, I extend my sincere wish that those of you with these tremendous diplomatic skills can resolve the problems with India and Kashmir. Obviously, if we are going going to have the great nations of the world come together, it's going to require that India and Pakistan, as well as Russia and China and the US and so forth, can participate. I think it was very important when both India and Pakistan joined the SCO, and I understand the severity of the problems. But I think, again, like the anti-China problem in the US and other problems, I think these are not really local issues. These are issues that will affect whether or not we can achieve a true global Belt and Road, a new renaissance. So I wish you my very best on being able to resolve that and bring peace to the South Asia as well.
Thank you, Mike. Khalid Saab, you mentioned about CPAC very well. So just last final word from your side, because me and Hassan Daud really wanted to hear from you.
See, we all know that during the Cold War, the world was security driven, you know, and but after the end of Cold War, the age of globalization and economic development, you know, prevailed. But now, of late, again, the old policy of securitization of international politics is emerging. So there are two now competing worldviews. One is the security focus, the other is development oriented. And this struggle is going on, and I think it is incumbent upon the international community to concert their efforts to preserve this world based on multilateralism, economic development, social progress, because if we go astray, that will not be for the interest of the people of this world. Thank you.
Thank you, Khalid. Khalid, always very kind, always very supportive. God bless you always. And Hassan Daud Saab, I'm thankful that whenever we call you, we contact you, you always give us time. And you know, your information and your experience is really important, because we are in the process of developing a research report, and we keep on doing it. So your output is something which is very important. Please.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, and it was, you know, great to be amongst people who understand regional integration. For me, largely, I'm a project management specialist, so for me, it's more of about my bread and butter that you have more projects and integration. But I would echo both Mr. Mike and also Ambassador Khalid in two ways. I would echo Mike by phrasing it in a way that we should have more saner voice than noise. So this is my caption for what Mr. Mike succinctly spoke about. And in terms of what Mr. Khalid said, I would give it my quoting in terms of I hope that more regional integration takes place. I hope more trade takes place, and we can give a better world to our next generation as opposed to what we had when we were entering our professional life. So I hope that we can bring the right kind of economic growth where there are jobs and people based on their professional skills can and do wonders, and we can see more incubation centers than operation rooms of war.
Thank you very much, Hassan Daud. So always very informative and a very valid point. Now I request Mr. Bashir Ahmed Saab that some message for BRI, and as you are handling with the youth, so any message for them and how we can further, involve our youth in this BRI initiative.
Thank you very much. In fact, I would say that CPAC is a great initiative, and this provides numerous opportunities for Pakistan to develop, particularly its people. I would just try to focus on 2 points from the CPAC point of view. And just, I mean, from the Pakistan perspective, that whatever we do, the focus should be the social development. I'm not using the word economics development. I am just focusing on the social development, which is far more essential for Pakistan. Number two, whatever project we undertake, we got to have that people-centric approach in the development of those projects too. Number three, Pakistan is in a difficult position. It is hanging between geopolitics and geoeconomics because of the environments, because of the situation, international players going and coming inside. China is coming, America's interest, Russia, and so many other people, they're coming. Now, the Pakistan is hanging in between. The success would be how best Pakistan makes a perfect fit between geopolitics and geoeconomics. So I think this would be the turning point of Pakistan's point of view on CPAC and BRI, where it makes a balance of the geopolitics and geoeconomics, keeping those people-centric approach and focusing on the social development, particularly, I would say, the people of Balochistan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bashir Ahmed Saab, and it's really nice to interact with you and looking forward to work together in future as well. And before moving to Iram, I just want to inform my worthy panelists and also the attendees that we had the soft launch of Belt and Road Initiative BRI TV. And on BRI TV, if you have any information or anything, so we are going to launch it soon. Already, we are thankful to the ambassador of China who gave his very good remarks and appreciation for this initiative. We are working with the leading news agencies of China and other BRI countries, and many journalists, writers are on board with us, and also academia. So I request all of you that we'll share the link with you, and you must go through it. And inshallah, later on, a special program will be telecast on BRI TV in this regard. Now I request Ms. Iram to have your concluding remarks. Please, Iram, and thank you very much for joining us. And two of our businessmen friends left because it was too much maybe academic related information, and they were more interested to know more about the business opportunity. So inshallah, we are having some businessman specific webinar very soon as well. So over to Iram, please.
Yeah, thank you, Amna, first of all, for inviting me and just collaborating with us with the SDG Academy. I just want to add, there are so many experts sitting over here. I just want to add like one or two points. Like as we all know that CPAC has lots of things, for example, the construction of industrial parks, agricultural farms, railways, new airports, roads, fiber optic networks, energy generating projects, I think including one of the world's largest solar farms, and a high-speed train between Karachi and Peshawar that will travel over 160 kilometers per hour. So there are so many potentials available. So we, as in Pakistan, are we ready to tap the potentials? This is one of the questions we can ask ourselves, the policymaker, the government, and all the stakeholders. Another important point is that CPEC is working on all these economic initiatives, but it's also adding, I think, much more on our cultural and civic implications. It's creating more bridges between different communities and different countries and different regions of the world. So that is from my side, and I hope again that this is just the first, you can say, show on the BRI. As Amna just said, we'll be looking forward to all these special experts and analysts that we will be collaborating with you, and will be coming up with more new programs. Thank you, Amna.
Thank you very much. So I think from all the discussion, we believe that Pakistan is having the most important position among the other Belt and Road countries. And we are strong believer of Pak-Chin Dosti, and now Pakistan and BRI countries Dosti, because we need to work for economic collaboration, social collaborations, and we need to believe in world peace. And world peace can only be achieved if we are having the connectivity with other parts of the world. I'm really thankful to my all worthy panelists. Pak-Chin Dosti Zindabad, Pakistan Paindabad, aap sabko, all of you, I would like to greet Happy Independence Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Yeah,
ma'am.
happy Independence Day to all of you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you.